Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. And now we come to the season 1 finale of Everybody Loves Raymond. It is Why Are We Here? Now, if you were to just hear that title, two possible things could pop up. It's like either Allie is asking the sex question rather early, or we're going to get an explanation for why the hell they moved across the street from Ray's parents when we see how they are. And it's that one. And the fun thing I love about this, and this is a mild redemption for Debra considering what happened in the previous episode, it was Debra's fault. So for everything we see throughout this season and the subsequent seasons and everything, we can all blame it on Debra because she did not want to listen to Ray. But I digress because I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Now the episode is bookended, by the initial scene. It's just a whole random thing happens with the Barones involving Debra's dinner plans. It's something that could initially happen in any episode. It doesn't. The catalyst itself does not really matter for this first flashback. All that matters is the Frank, Marie, and Robert cause some mischief that gets under Debra's skin, and it involves her cooking and some other random complaints that Marie is known for, butting in, coming in. Oh, it smelled questionable. Stuff we've seen from Marie 1,000 times. Well, not by this point. And it gets her to ask, why do we move across the street? And of course, Ray's like, you don't remember? And the flashback begins. And the thing I like about this, and Phil, I think, put this the best on the commentary, is that this not only gives answers to certain questions and became a running theme for the first 6 season enders, but it also gives the show the fun of fantasy without delving too much into fantasy. Because reminiscing is something you can usually do, but here, of course, it's reminiscing and we actually get to show the audience it as a flashback. And it's nice, especially since this one, and they're sitting at the breakfast table, I should say. It's a nice little thing. And, of course, since it's a flashback, you get to be creative with the characters, their looks, and from a comedy standpoint, you get to be creative with the character interactions. Because you see how they interact in the past, and then you're just sitting there chuckling like, oh, my sweet, sweet summer child. And in this episode, we see that when it comes to Debra interacting with Frank and Marie in the past. Like when Marie just shows up with like whole milk and saying, oh, Allie needs it now that she's walking, and you can tell Debra really appreciates that. And you're like, future Debra would not appreciate that. She'd probably take that milk and spill it on Marie, or would want to. But then Ray would stop her as the little angel on Debra's shoulder. As we get into the flashback, we see that Ray, Debra, and baby Allie, who in this episode is played by either Sullivan or Sawyer Sweden, dressed up in a dress. They never state which one it is, because I don't even think they remember, or they're just not going to tell. Either way, they apologize in the commentary for it, but it's like, it makes sense economically. I mean, you either have to go out and find an actress with blonde hair that's of the right age to play a young Allie, or dress up one of the boys in drag. And I guess that one might be a little cheaper. And plus, it makes for an interesting conversation starter when they're older, even though one of them is no longer with us. Rest in peace. We get there. We see they're in their little apartment. They hardly ever see Frank and Marie. They come over, but they don't come over as much as they do in the main time, which is a good thing. Ray's probably like, oh, thank God. Debra's pregnant again, which, as you watch this, you can notice that this is not a fake pregnant body. That is Patricia Heaton's actual body. She was pregnant twice over the course of the show, here and then during season 3. With that one, they hit it creatively a couple times. And one of my favorite episodes, Ping Pong, she's only in one scene and she's wearing a blanket around her, and that was to hide it. And of course, it's involved in one of my favorite bloopers of that show, but I'll mention that when I get to that episode in a couple months, I guess. But here, since they have the pregnancy, they decided to use it. And they were actually, according to the commentary, mulling about it in the writer's room, because in the present day, you got to hide it. You can even tell that, knowing that she's pregnant, that in the initial scene, they have her behind the table, and you never actually see her get up. Or if she does, they hide it with creative camera work. And even in the episodes before this, if you go back and watch it, you notice the camera work is creative. Either Debra's either sitting down or they're shooting it to where it's mainly your upper part or other ways to hide it. Whereas here she's just sitting down and the rest of the episode flaunting it for the flashback. And it works well. Now, as the episode goes on, Debra finds out that not only is she carrying a boy, she's carrying twin boys. And I brought up that Ray was still learning the nuances of acting during this season, and he would continue over the next couple seasons as he practiced both on set and, of course, going over the scripts with Richard Marion, who was his acting coach, who passed away, I believe, at the end of season 3. And the results are there from the acting coach. I mean, he did win an Emmy, I think at least once. But as I've said, his acting is a little awkward at points during this season, which works a couple times. But even with that said, the way that Ray Romano sells reacting to the news that Debra is pregnant with twins, you have to applaud him for it, because it's such, even with the limited amount of experience he has, he sells that dramatic moment well. It's both joy, a little shock, because as he says, twins don't run in his family, and then followed by, oh boy, where are we going to put him? Just the way he sells that whole scene and the way he's excited, because first he's excited because it's a boy, which is based off of Ray's real life, where him and his wife were having their second child. He's like, I wanted a boy. His wife's like, don't give me any of that. Then, of course, when he found out it was boys, the way she told him was different. Probably would have worked just as well, but the way here is a little bit more dramatic. And he goes and jumps up and down like, yay, boy! And then like, someone's gonna have to show me how to do a cartwheel right now. Definitely in keeping with Ray as a character, and Ray Romano does sell it well. And of course, since they now have to find a bigger place because they don't have the room for twins, makes me wonder if they would have moved out of there right away if it was a single birth. But with twins, they definitely got to move out, because twins of any type would be cramped in that area. If it was girls, you could kind of try to make it work. But twin boys, you're definitely going to need it, because they'll probably be a bit more rowdy. Ladle, 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 to quote Ray from an episode. And of course, Ray, he gets out a map and he does a whole plan of like, right, this is too close to my parents, this is too far away, they'll become overnight guests, so here. And of course, the Barones show up. They get the news. Of course, Frank and Maria are excited that it's twins. Of course, you could tell that in the back of his mind, Robert is probably a little excited, but he's also a little jealous, continuing with that character arc. And the line he says to sell it, Ray loves this line, Phil loves this line, and I have to say I love this line too. He's like, oh, look at Raymond go. Just the way he says it, it is in spirit with the way the title's supposed to be said. Everybody loves Raymond. Look at Raymond go. And just the way he sells it. Which, speaking of which, everyone else, their hair is just slightly different for the flashback, but for Brad to sell older Robert when he's still married, they threw a mustache on him. And I put this in the notes. This is mostly in a couple of shots, but he kind of looks like a tall Gomez Adams with that mustache. Maybe it's just the way it's built. All I'm waiting for him to get a rapier and go, dirty pool, Raymond. Then all we need then is a Ray Romano shave his head and go as Fester. Well, once the Barones find out that it's twins and boys, they get in on the whole house planning. And we find out something we didn't know about Frank before, which has me scratching my head a little bit. And that is that he has his real estate license. Never brought up again after this, though, but he has it. And he has a house he's been meaning to show. Now, the thing with this, with how we see of his personality, it makes me wonder, how well was he at selling real estate? Has he closed on houses before? Has he just dabbled in it, never actually sold anything? What's his commission usually? Which also brings the question, with this sale he does manage to do with Ray and Debra, what was his commission on the house? Does he still have any of that commission? Or from how we saw Marie, did she squirrel away any of that into her little secret fund account? These are questions that are never answered. It's just ones I'm thinking just watching this episode back. It's one of those things you never probably think of as a kid watching a show, but as an adult you probably are like, I wonder. But then also, with how he deals with people, how was he able to do real estate? Since it's a hobby, that probably him not being the best people person, or just a people person to a point, is not an issue. Just as long as he is still respectful and has some situational awareness, which Frank does seem to have some situational awareness until you really annoy him, then that goes out the window. But here he decides to show him the house, and it's the house across the street from him and Marie. And of course, that location is the big selling point for Debra. Was just learning that, you're like, my sweet summer challenge, you do not know what you're in for. And just Ray is just trying to tell her, no, Debra, no, we cannot move here. This is the worst thing. No, no, no. For the love of God, no. But she does not listen. Ray caves. They sign it. And that is how they moved across the street from Frank and Marie. All because Debra did not listen to Ray. And here she is regretting it all these years later. Another little thing about the flashback is that since this is when Robert was married, we get a little bit more insight into his relationship with Joanne without seeing her. And they're fighting at this point over the weirdest things. In this episode, in a scene, they were fighting because he was playing ping pong during lunch. It's like, there's nothing wrong with playing ping pong. That goes hand in hand with Joanne. She seems to complain about the smallest little thing, which makes you wonder, what was the initial attraction between Joanne and Robert? What shared interests do they have that made them get romantically involved to the point that they got married? They don't really delve too deeply into their relationship, which is kind of sad because it would have been nice to learn more. Would have given us an excuse to have her act the actress in a couple more episodes. But alas, we only get her in 2 episodes, and one of them is a flashback regarding when the divorce happened, which that's not going to be the end of season 4. There's some little things that would have been nice to at least been explored more, even if it was just a quick exposition. One fun little trivia note was this was the first episode that Ray Romano helped write for the show, and he would write a lot more episodes after this. I don't have them on the notes, but I just thought that was a little interesting thing. He didn't write it alone, though. He wrote it with Tom Paris. He says the wrong name on the commentary, but I looked it up on IMDb. Tom Paris is who's listed. And as he says on the commentary, he gained a new respect for script writing, or should I say telewriting in this case, after this because it's so freaking hard, which on the commentary Phil does joke with him about. He's like, hey, not so easy, is it? Funny boy. And it's right. I mean, writing for comedy on the stage is a little different than writing for, film, or even, film TV, as I'm saying. You got to write it, and you got to write the stage direction, how you think the things are supposed to go. And I don't know what the difference is between writing a script for a film and writing it for TV are. I'm sure with TV you might be able to get away with saying the different type of angles, or if it's a specific part of the script you want a specific angle, like a closer shot on someone to sell the humor, and then pull back for the reaction. I'd have to actually look at one of these ones. I know for film scripts they don't want you to do that, but you can imply. But apparently with older scripts you could actually full on state what type of angle you wanted. Another thing that I find interesting is that, according to Philip Rosenthal, when they filmed this episode, the audience was only half full. And that's something you would never notice from listening to how the laugh track is. And this show used the authentic laugh track from when they recorded in front of an audience. And you listen to them, it's like, wow. So they made up for their lack of numbers with enthusiasm, which is something I cannot say about an episode of Fawlty Towers I covered. But that, I think, might be more a language barrier and a cultural barrier rather than numbers barrier. So, a little different thing. You don't even notice that numbers difference there. Another little thing is that this episode, at least in the commentary, they do mention something I did mention in passing, I think in either the pilot episode or one of the subsequent ones, about they switched what days they were doing, and then the ratings picked up. They went from Friday to Monday about 5 weeks before this episode, and the last 6 played on Monday, and that's when their ratings went up. And it feels like, oh, we're going to be here a while then. And then that was the first of the many hurdles that they overcame. Then they were going up against Ally McBeal a couple years later, and they still did well because, hey, they survived season 3 and went on and had 9 seasons. So they were the little show that could. And I could definitely say from watching the last couple seasons live, this definitely feels like a show that do better on Monday than it would on Friday. But then again, Friday's usually a death night for TV unless you're an established show or it's something that people are actually going to watch first and then go do whatever they want to do, or depending on what time you have. But definitely this feels like a show that, like, 9 o'clock Friday night, yeah, I can see why it didn't do so well in its original time slot. And they mentioned something from the table readings, which I thought was funny. I'm like, this would have been funny if they actually had filmed the take and this was said accidentally. But while doing a table reading involving Frank's line, that's why Ray has a cannoli on his ass, in regards to pregnant women having a birthmark, or giving their child a birthmark if they have a craving and they don't eat that food. Instead of on, he said that's why Ray has a cannoli up his ass, which is infinitely more funny for a different reason, but obviously not TV friendly. I really do wish that there was video of that table reading, because I would love to have seen the group reaction. And from what Phil and Ray mentioned in the commentary, these are the type of jokes that go through the writer's room. They get that out of their system to write more TV-friendly jokes, even though, as they mentioned in this episode, one of those darker bathroom jokes did make it in, said by Frank. And it is one that definitely feels safe for TV, but it is pretty funny. And that plumbing can take a punch. All in all, this is a pretty fun episode. Definitely makes my top 10 for the season. I know I've said that a couple times already, but definitely does. You just laugh at the fact that it's like, oh, Debra, it's all your fault. Other than the flashback scenes, Frank and Marie don't really have a big impact on the plot, because, as I said at the beginning, it could have been anything. We just needed a catalyst there, so it doesn't matter, so it feels like an afterthought. It's just more stuff. But in the middle part of the episode, you really do like them, because even though they're doing their usual stuff, it's not as bad, considering the context. They're not barging in from across the street. Robert's still his usual self, but it's also spurred on by the fact he's having marital issues. And then, of course, Ray and Debra, still usual dynamic. It's just different because they don't have to worry about, barging in from across the street. And instead of the usual marital bickering about raising the kids, spending too much time at work, your parents, it's, ooh, we gotta find a new place. And please not this place. So, flashback shenanigans. Now we're gonna move on to season 2. Don't know if it's gonna be the next week or if I'll wait a week just to let the channel breathe a little bit, but it should be coming up pretty soon. And we're gonna be switching from the red box to the green box. But we're still on the Mexican flag.